Hello and welcome to NIVAS. This is the third video in our series of art and culture mains PYQ discussion, and here we are with a question from the 2018 mains exam on travelers. To be specific, this question is on Chinese and Arab travelers. Before exploring this question and providing you a model to work on, let me introduce you to a 15-month comprehensive mentorship program that NIVA is offering. Just go to the description and find the link of a video that will explain this comprehensive mentorship program in detail. Also find the link of our Telegram channel where you can find the handouts of these discussions as well as our current affairs magazine. Let's not waste time. Let's go into the question one by one. Assess the importance of Chinese and Arab travelers in reconstruction of the history of India. Now see, on a whole, when you look at this question, you have two key picks, Chinese and Arab travelers. And this can also be something that directs your structure. But let me bring to your attention to something that you often will miss out. Reconstruction of the history of India. It doesn't talk about history of India, but reconstruction of the history of India. Now that is a key. This is a key historical term that very often students who are not of history fail to understand. Because if you take the way Indian history was constructed, when you go to the colonial period, when they came to India, they said that Indians lacked historical sense because Indians didn't have proper historical text. What we had was idihasas, puranas, traditions, myths. We didn't have historical text. But later, when the nationalist historians came and when historians like Romila Thapa came, they gave the idea of an embedded history. Embedded history means history that is embedded in the traditions and the other texts. For example, she talks about Idihasa Purana tradition. The Idihasa Purana tradition, take example of Ramayana. Even though the story is fictional, it gives you insights into the society of that period, and that is called embedded history. So with the help of such an approach, we started reconstructing our history. And in that context, for reconstruction of Indian history, we relied on all sources, and one of the major sources was the accounts of travelers or the travelogues. And even within that, Chinese and Arab travelers were the most proficient. And that is how the relevance of this question can be underlined from a historical context. Now let's come to the structure. Since I've explained this part, now you will know that the second part is also important. So an ideal way to introduce this question would be, a natural way of introducing this question would be to use or highlight the importance of Chinese and Arab travelers. The way I recommend to you is to introduce it by giving emphasis to the second part. Anyway, the body is going to be this first part. So emphasis the second part in the introduction, where we will talk about the reconstruction of Indian history. Indian history was reconstructed ever since the nationalist school of historians through a series of sources which had history embedded in it. It included traditions, myths, idihasas, puranas, and travelogues. And travelogues acted as a major historical sources in which Chinese and Arab travelers occupied the major position. So you can reword it, you can cut short it, but that is the idea of a introduction that I suggest in this video. Now come to the structure. Now there are different ways through which you can structure this answer. As I said, on the outlook, when you look at this question, it's a 10 marker. You have two separations, Chinese and Arab, and that is one way of structuring this answer. You also have a different way of structuring this answer. You can structure it thematically. For example, political view. So everything should be connected with reconstruction. The heading can be how travelers helped in the reconstruction of Indian history, and then you can give dimensions like political reconstruction, social reconstruction, economic reconstruction. Means these are all dimensions of history. So you can take an example from one traveler and you can put it in a political angle, and you can say that this traveler or this kind of works helped in the political reconstruction of history. Just like that, you can structure that. The structure we are following here is a different thing. We are following the broad division of Chinese and Arab first. Then under that, we are giving the travelers one by one. So this will, in that way, it will give more visibility to you. So you are giving the traveler, then you are marking his spirit, then you are marking his contribution, then you are saying how it was enabling the reconstruction of history. So this is a more organized way of structuring this answer, but this is not a hard and fast rule. You can be flexible. Then one value addition to this is the map. So this is a question where map doesn't directly come into the picture, but we have given an innovative way you can follow. You can draw the map of India, because in that period we don't talk about India in the modern sense. When we study history from in the ancient and the medieval period, we talk about the Indian subcontinent. So you can draw the map of Indian subcontinent, you can draw China in it, you can draw the Arabian Peninsula in it, and you can show the route of travelers. Both the travelers, most of them came through the land route, and some of them relied on the sea route as well. Because Arab travelers visited Kerala coast since 6th century AD. So ever since then we have contacts with them. So they have relied on the sea route as well as the land route. You can show the route. Then one more innovative way would be to suggest and place these travelers in different positions. For example, Xuanzang visited Harsha's reign, or Fahian, he visited the Gupta's reign. So you can give the capital of Chandragupta II, which is the Indo-Gangetic region, and you can mark it there. Xuanzang visited the Cholas, so you can mark it somewhere here. Or you can go to the period of Al-Biruni or Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta's major visit was in the Malabar coast. You can mark it here. Just like that, innovatively you can trace different travelers and hook them to different regions of India. That is one way of doing it. So it is flexible, but showing the routes would be a more better way, I would say. Now let's come to the most important part of the question, which is its body. Now, the way we have structured it, I've already explained to you. Let's go to the travelers one by one. Now, when we talk about Chinese travelers, there are two major travelers. One is Fahian and second is Xuanzang. And these two names are a must in this question. If you miss out on this, 90% of the students are going to write them and you will miss out your marks. Bring Fahian and Xuanzang into your answer, but the intricacies of it, that is where you're going to score high marks. First, you mark when Fahian visited India. He visited India during the 5th century AD. All of these travelers visited in the AD, not in the BCE. He visited during 5th century AD, which is during the period of Gupta, to be specific, Chandragupta II. Whatever I have marked in red here, as we have followed in our previous videos, these are keywords. These are key value additions. So we are giving you a model, a structure, an introduction and conclusion. We are giving you value additions as well in this session. So if you bring this value additions, that will help your answer to stand out. Now look at the contributions of Fahian. First of all, I told you he came in the Chandragupta period. And both these travelers, their primary intention was to explore the nature of Buddhism in India, because India was the land of Buddha. Buddha was born, brought up, everything was in India, around the modern day Bihar region. So they visited India with that perspective. And when Fahian visited India, Buddhism was filled with sectarian divisions. So when Buddhism emerged, the older form was Hinayana Buddhism. Then in the 1st century BC, during the period of Kanishka, Mahayana Buddhism emerged. And later on, Mahayana Buddhism dominated. So this Mahayana Buddhism, which emerged in the 1st century BC, dominated later on. It was more influenced by Sanskrit, whereas the Hinayana route, or the route that was patterned by Buddha himself, was more on the vernacular side. Buddha spoke in Pali and Prakrit. But when it comes to Mahayana Buddhism, it was more inclined towards the Sanskrit tradition. So this sectorial division is clearly marked by Fahian. So he gives insights into the religious as well as the cultural history of India. So in a way, it is helping us to reconstruct our religious and cultural past. You always connect these points with the idea of the question. Second, he gives us direct insights about the conditions of social stratification. One famous example that Fahian talks about is that lower caste people, or the depressed class people, had to hang clappers around their necks when they are walking, so that they don't pollute others. So this is a classic example that is often used to denote the amount of caste discrimination that was present in India even in 5th century AD. So this example can be quoted: social stratification, reconstruction of social history. But one important point, this is on the positive side, Fahian comparatively had a safe travel. When you compare it with other travelers, most of them were looted in India, and they have written about their grave experiences about India. But Fahian comparatively had a safer travel because he relied on dharmashalas, or safe travel homes that was constructed by kings. So he mentions that, and he had a safer travel. It reflects on the law and order situation in the country as well. You can link it to that. Now under Fahian itself, we have given two different dimensions. Now let's come to Xuanzang. He visited in 7th century AD, which is during the reign of Harsha. Again, he also viewed India, or he was curious about the nature of Buddhism in India, and he talks about the conversion of Harsha into Mahayana Buddhism. So this gives an insight about the growing role or the strengthening nature of Mahayana Buddhism in that time. An important keyword that can be given under Huansang is his work, Suyuki. This is the name of his work. He also talks about the sectarial divisions within Mahayana Buddhism and how it is strengthened there and how the nature of Buddhism changes over a period of time. So these are the insights from his works. Now let's move to the Arab travelers. When we talk about Arab travelers, their works are more diverse. Their interest was not confined to Buddhism. They had a much more pan-Indian appeal because they traveled a lot. They came through the sea route as well as the land route, and we have much more travelers as well. The most famous of them is Al-Biruni, visited during 11th century AD during the period of Muhammad Ghazni, the time when Delhi Sultanate emerged in the Indo-Gangetic plain. The most famous work of Al-Biruni is Kitab al-Hind. If you're mentioning Al-Biruni, bring in Kitab al-Hind because it is a very famous work written by Al-Biruni. Now, Al-Biruni talks about the Vedic traditions in India. So he, in a way, traces the history of India back to Vedic traditions. So he's an important scholar as well. So he talks about that. So it helps us to reconstruct the Indian philosophy. Then he talks about the cultural diversity of India because he has traveled across the lengths and breadths of India. So he talks about the cultural diversity. So cultural history of India. Second important name is Al-Masudi, 10th century AD. The important thing with Al-Masudi is that Al-Masudi is a polymath. He was not just a traveler, he was a geographer, he was a historian, he was into science. So he has observed all these things and noted them down, Muruj-ul-Sahab, his work. So he has given a comprehensive and multi-dimensional perspective about Indian society, you can say that. Another famous traveler, Abdul Razak. This is a previous year question of the UPSC as well in the context of Krishna Deva Raya. So Abdul Razak visited during the Krishna Deva Raya's period in mainly South Indian region because Karnataka, centered at Hampi, was the capital of Krishna Deva Raya. He visited there and he talks about a social system of polyandry that was prevalent in Malabar. Malabar is the northern Kerala. If you take Kerala, Malabar is the northern part of Kerala. Abdul Razak, as I said, he visited the court of Krishna Deva Raya, which is Karnataka, and he talks about the polyandry system that was present here. So this is a reflection of the social or the societal nature of Indian society. So reconstruct history, when you talk about history, history is not just political history. It's not a history of dynasties alone. It has different dimensions like society, economy, subaltern history, all these things. So this is a direct insight because this is a custom that we practiced here. This keyword should be brought in. This can be traced to the time of Tipu Sultan as well because Tipu Sultan comes up with a declaration where he says that women in Kerala should start marrying. So that was the kind of society that was prevalent in Kerala. Women doesn't used to marry. So Abdul Razak also traces that in the time of Vijayanagara Empire. Now come to Ibn Battuta. He also gives an interesting insight. This was also a UPSC question in the past. He talks about the culture of gold wearing in India, especially in Malabar, in Kerala, northern Kerala and the southern Karnataka region. So when you give a name of a historian, you have to mark at least one relevance that he has contributed to the reconstruction of history. So when we talked about the historians in the initial stages and the travelers in the initial stages, we gave more than 1 point. When it comes to the back end, we are giving at least 1 point. That is a structure you can also follow. Then you have one more name, Mahuar. What he did was to document the trade routes. Now you can connect it in a different way because these people who came to India, they gave a very glorious and shiny picture of Indian society and economy to their own countries. And as a result, India was pictured as a glorious land which everybody wanted to visit. And that was the curiosity of the Europeans as well. And this insights into trade routes, this led to further influx of foreigners into Indian society. So they actually gave an idea of Indian society to the outside world during that time as well. So they not only helps us to construct our own history in modern times, they helped outside Indians to reconstruct or understand Indian society in their times as well. So that can also be marked. Now I'll give you one more insight about the structuring of this question. After finishing the introduction, you can in fact give the name of the travelers in a flow chart. The way we have mentioned here, you can give Chinese and Arab in 2 different flow charts. Then you can come to the contributions alone. So that is also one way of dealing with it. or you can follow the structure that we have followed here. Any which way, if the content is there, it's well and good. If the keywords are there, it is very good. Now, how do we conclude this? The question primarily here, I have added some pictures for your reference to just incite your interest. This is Huan Sang. It's a representational picture. We don't know how exactly Huan Sang looked, but this is a representational picture of the Chinese traveler. And this is the cover page of the most famous work on Ibn Battuta by Samuel Lee. This is how a Arab traveler should have looked in 14th century. So that's a interesting value addition for you to generate interest in history. Now let's come to the conclusion. Now we are talking about travelers. We have to conclude this answer in a comprehensive perspective. Either we can talk about how they helped in the reconstruction, just like we have argued and concluded in a generalistic way, or we can bring in a keyword, which is Aditi Devo Bhava. The way Indian society treated whoever came here, because we never conquered any other society. We treated every traveler with courtesy, and what they did was to explore India and contribute to the Indian society. And how do they contribute? They contribute even in the present by helping us to reconstruct the Indian history. So while following the principle of Aditi Devo Bhava, we let them explore our land, and as a result, they have contributed to the reconstruction of Indian history. So that is the way we suggest you to conclude this answer. I hope the discussion was fruitful to you. We'll come back with the fourth video in the series of sessions. I hope the session is enjoyable as well as fruitful to you. Once again, I remind you about the 15-month comprehensive mentorship program. Please check out our description box for the link to the detailed video on that. Also check out our Telegram channel for the handout of this particular video as well as our monthly current affairs magazine. Thank you for listening once again. Thank you.